What's up, everybody, and welcome back to Fireside Giants. I'm your host, Anthony Rivardo, joined by my co-host, Alex Wilson. And the Giants kicked off their first joint practice with the Detroit Lions today, of course, in preparation for Thursday night, the preseason opener. Man, I'm so excited. Giants back on the football field, going off against the Detroit Lions for the first preseason game Thursday, 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. I cannot wait, but today we got the joint practice with the Lions, and I have to say, if you compare this joint practice to last year's first joint practice with the Lions, you got to feel encouraged by this New York Giants team. And I'm not trying to be the overly optimistic Giants fan here, and don't call me a homer. I just want to compare and contrast. Last year, when the Giants had their joint practices with the Lions, it was a blank show, to say the least. The Giants were whooped day in and day out by the Lions. But today, they actually held their own. They got into a few fights, which we're going to talk about. That was a lot of fun, really exciting. Football is officially back when teams are fighting during practice. You'll love to see it. But on top of that, the Giants actually got the better of the Lions in multiple instances. They really shut them down in the red zone, the Lions offense, which I think is a major takeaway. Bobby Okereke had a pick. Daniel Jones dropped a few deep dimes to Jalen Hyatt and Malik Nabers. Wonderful, spectacular touchdown grab from Nabers today, which we're going to react to. And just generally speaking, it felt like a pretty even practice. There was no clear and obvious winner. Neither side really consistently got the better of the other. So just generally speaking, it was a good practice for the Giants, and it was an encouraging sign as they continue to ramp up here ahead for their first preseason game later this week. So we're going to go ahead and dive into all of our takeaways and top storylines out of this first joint practice. But before we do, make sure to leave a like if you enjoy this episode, subscribe to the channel if you're new, ring the bell so you don't miss an episode, and comment your thoughts down below in the comment section. If you're listening on Apple or Spotify, please make sure to leave us a 5-star review. Go ahead and follow us on all of our social media channels at Fireside Giants. Without further ado, Alex, how are you doing today, my friend, and what is your reaction to the first joint practice between the Giants and the Lions?
I'm doing really good, and listen, this is a different situation than last year. The Giants came out dull, they came out weak, they came out slow. This time around, the Giants came out strong, they came out fast, they came out aggressive, and there was fights, there was scrums, there was excitement, there was Malik Nabers torching the Lions secondary. This is the Giants that we wanted to see, right? This is the situation where you look at, a team that coming off a really bad year, a team coming off a season that was disappointing, a team coming off a season that was littered with injury, and we find ourselves in a spot where we held our own against a very, very good Super Bowl contending Lions team in the first day of joint practice. Now, again, not regular season. You can't touch the quarterback. Daniel Jones obviously, had a couple of really nice throws today. He hit Jalen Hyatt for a couple of deep balls. Obviously, he hit Nabers on multiple occasions. There was one where Nabers tiptoed his feet. I know they called it incomplete, but the replay showed that it was actually in bounds. This dude, Nabers, is unbelievable. He is going to be a problem for every cornerback in this league. It's going to be fun to watch him go up against some really, really talented players. So he's already jumping off the screen. He's already torching some quality players on our own team, and of course now the Lions. So we're seeing him do it against opposing teams, and that competitive spirit is certainly there. I'm excited, man. Like this offensive line looks a lot better. I know in the title it says the offensive line is still a concern, and the reason I wanted to label it a concern is because of the injuries and because JMS is still not practicing, because Evan Neal, they don't even know when he's going to start practicing. The situation at hand is really problematic from an injury standpoint. One guy goes down, you're in deep duty, right? Like you look at Greg Van Roten, he's playing center right now. You need him playing right guard. And look, the only reason that I'm okay with it, him cross-training, is because he already has a lot of chemistry with Jermaine Illuminor. So I'm not necessarily concerned about the loss of chemistry there. But John Michael Schmidt's not playing center right now is a major loss. That's a major setback for this group. But I do think they're going to be a lot better. The fact that they held their own against a solid Detroit pass rush, that says a lot to what Carmen Bracillo has been doing already. I do think that right now, if you're the Giants, you look ahead to the regular season, you say to yourself, we have playmakers, we have a really good pass rush on paper, some really good young players. The fact that we're holding our own against the Lions is a good sign in my opinion.
I think it's a great sign. The Giants actually going toe-to-toe with the Lions in the first joint practice. Like I said, compare and contrast this to last year when the Giants had their first practice with the Lions. It was messy, to say the least. But today, they held their own, and you got to be encouraged by that. Now, one of the main things that I want to talk about, Alex, is the fights, right? We saw a few scrappy moments. Daniel Jones got in the middle of a fight. This is not the first time this has happened either. Daniel Jones has gotten involved with fights during training camp in the past. I think it was during a Giants versus Giants fight in the past. But if you're looking ahead to these joint practices with the Lions, and you're talking about how scrappy and chippy it's been with these fights today, think you get really excited about that. And I think you say, hey, the Giants are not backing down. They're not putting their tail between their legs, so to speak, and turning the other way and running away from this fierce Lions team. They are fighting. They are standing there in East Rutherford, New Jersey, and say, bring it your best, Detroit. We are going to fight you and punch you back in the mouth. But Alex, Daniel Jones getting involved in the fight, getting scrappy, having fun. I thought that was awesome. And listen, we can criticize him all we want for the way that he plays the quarterback position, but we really cannot criticize Daniel Jones for being the teammate that he is and for being the person that he is off of the field or even on the field but not playing the game. So what's your reaction to Daniel Jones getting involved with the fight? I heard that Brian Burns was really hyped up about it when he was speaking to the media. How are you feeling about DJ getting involved in the scrum?
I love it. This is, listen, you know, obviously don't want to be in a spot where he can get hurt, but I want this guy showing some energy, man. In the past, he's looked robotic. He's looked dull. Like, show this. Like, you got nothing to lose. You got everything to gain, right? Like, just let it all out there. Leave it all out on the field. Be competitive. He wants to play in this first preseason game. I doubt the Giants let him, but he wants to. I do feel as though Daniel Jones made some nice throws. He was running around. He was, you know, making nice plays. Again, some of them may have been sacks because he was in the pocket for a while. And, you know, obviously that's a real game scenario where you have to navigate. But I do think that when it comes to his performance, I was happy with what he did today. He stood up for his teammates. That's what you expect from your quarterback. You expect the same thing if anything happens to your quarterback from the offensive lineman. Of course, you know, the perfect example is Nick Gates always getting into scrums in games when people would hit Daniel Jones or whatever it might be. So, you know, right now I feel as though he's making progress. Those deep balls that were concerning a week ago, he hit a couple of them today that were very, very nice. Now we need to see it with pressure. We need to see it in live action. We need to see it in a real game scenario. This was more of a simulated scenario. I know, like, the ball got hit out of his hands and Brian Dable freaked out and was just hitting it out of his hands. It wasn't even like he got hit. So, like, you're not even supposed to touch the quarterback. So Daniel Jones knowing nobody can touch me is kind of reassuring from a quarterback perspective, right? You're like, you don't have to feel like you're going to get hit. So, you know, put him in a real action game where he knows like someone is going to hit him if he waits too long. That internal clock, you know, that's really what's been his problem in the past. I need to see him do that, but he's taking good steps forward. He's making the throws that are open. He's seeing the field better. I think that we are seeing progress from him, which is definitely good and bodes well for the Giants come the regular season. But we need him to be playing at peak capacity if we want to win some football games, right? So, you know, what are you thinking about DJ so far? I mean, I think there was not much negatives from today that I can kind of harp on with him.
No, I'm impressed with the way that he's played over the last several practices. I'm very happy to see him step into this first practice with the Lions and continue to play well because obviously last week, I believe it was last Tuesday, we had a discussion on Daniel Jones after a really ugly practice that he had last Tuesday morning. And then since then, he hasn't had a bad practice. He bounced back with his best practice so far on that Thursday, and it seems like he's only gotten better since then. So to see him step into the first joint practice, face off against another team, not the Giants, supposedly, you know, questionable secondary, but a good secondary and a good team in the Detroit Lions continue to make plays and hit his players downfield. I think you're encouraged by that. At least I know that I am. And I think that Jones is, you know, opened himself to a lot of criticism for the way that he's played over recent years and the injuries that he's had. But so far this summer, you do have to be happy with the way that he's played. And I got to say, I'm very encouraged to hear him say to the reporters today, I would like to play in the first preseason game. In my opinion, Daniel Jones does need to play at some point this preseason. He's coming off of a devastating torn ACL in November. He's back. He's prepared to play throughout preseason. Let him play. Let him knock off this rust. The Giants cannot afford to get put into a hole at the beginning of this season like they were last year. Last year, that 40-0 beatdown that they suffered in Week 1 versus the Cowboys, I think a lot of that had to do with them being rusty and the starters not playing enough in preseason and not practicing hard enough throughout the summer. This year, I don't want to see that happen. Giants Week 1 versus the Vikings, to me, I hate to say it, but it's a must-win game. You got to set the tone for the season. You're at home opener in Week 1, wearing those new ugly uniforms. Let Daniel Jones go out there, rip the ball, and get a win to start off the season right. Because when you look at the rest of the schedule after Weeks 1 and 2, you got Vikings, you got Commanders, and then you have a gauntlet of really good teams. Giants got to get off to a hot start. A lot of that will be determined by how hard they practice for the rest of the summer and what they do during the preseason. So for me, let Daniel Jones knock off this rust, let him get back on the field in the preseason, get ready for week 1. So I'm all in on it. I'm happy to hear him say that he wants to play in the first preseason game, and I'm hoping that we see him in every preseason game. F it, why not? Let's get him ready to roll for the regular season as long as he's able to stay healthy and avoid these hits. But speaking of health, Alex, still no John Michael Schmitz, still no Evan Neal. You think they're coming back soon? I mean, I know that we kind of discussed Evan Neal. We're pretty much over it, like we're pretty much ready to roll with Jermaine Illuminor as the right tackle. Maybe Evan Neal works in there as a backup eventually, but the one that I'm more concerned about is John Michael Schmitz. I kind of discussed that yesterday when I went solo in the episode. I'm definitely concerned that he's not on the field just yet, but I will say Greg Van Roten seems to be taking to this center position well and seems to be doing a fine job there. So do you have any thoughts or impressions on the offensive line, injuries, John Michael Schmitz, anything else in between?
On the defensive side, I kind of wanted to hit on Andrew Phillips, slot corner. Looked really good today, physical. He's running with the ones. I saw Tyrone Tracy has been getting a lot of reps behind Devin Singletary. It seems like he's the clear-cut back behind him. Like I said, mild take. I think he may be splitting those reps by the end of the season with Singletary 50-50. I think he's looking that good so far, and hopefully he can do it in the regular season against some NFL opponents. Like I said, offensive line looked good. Andrew Thomas had a couple of really nice blocks. Theo Johnson was very, very involved. He seems to be leading kind of the pack there for the primary receiver receiving tight end rather. And Daniel Bellinger, who is a good player, I think is falling into that TE2 spot. Definitely not what we thought would happen. I think they kind of wanted Bellinger to develop his passing a little bit more, but Theo Johnson, man, just a physical monster, like physical freak. Like you can't replicate someone like that. He was built in a lab physically for the tight end position. So I think the Giants are going to try to give him a lot of reps, expand his skill set, and see if he can become a key component as a receiver from the tight end position, and then develop his blocking as well. Sky's the limit for that guy. Didn't hear much about Banks. Didn't hear much about. I think Kayvon had a couple of good reps. I saw Jordan Riley had a great rep against Frank Ragnow. That he's a low-key guy that could be getting. I think Raheem Nunez-Roche probably starts at DT2 alongside Dexy, but I do think that Jordan Riley is going to get a lot of reps. And Elijah Chapman's another guy I've been hearing is getting a lot of first-team reps as well. So, like, if you're wondering who's playing alongside Dexter Lawrence, the Giants have a ton of options, a ton of good players there. You can't have starters and high-quality ones at every single spot. But the fact that Giants have that much talent at DE, and rather DT, is impressive, and it's a testament, by the way, to Andre Patterson, who's been doing a tremendous job developing these guys, and he's working with the pass rushers too. It's no surprise he's doing such great work with some of these guys. I mean, Jordan Riley's a 7th-round pick, and he's looking like he could be starting for this team. I'm excited to see what they can do. It's going to be really, really fun to watch this defensive front. But so far, like, defense looks solid. Had a couple of really nice plays. Like I said, Andrew Phillips stood out, and that's a guy that's going to be playing a lot of reps for this Giants defense. They drafted him to be a starter in the 3rd round, and that's great. Going into the nickel spot, it's a tough position, but he's got the intelligence and the physicality to make up for any lack of size. So that's kind of roundabout the overarching other narratives from today's practice. There's a lot of good stuff from this Giants team they showed on day one of the kind of joint practices.
Yeah, and just kind of expanding on some of the points you made there in terms of DT2, I think that's a really interesting battle right now. Obviously, like you said, Raheem Nunez-Roche, Nacho, leading the race to be the starter there as the veteran, but don't sleep on some of those young guys like an Elijah Chapman or a Jordan Riley. They've been having their standout moments. Now, obviously, that's going to get determined during the preseason. Who plays the best there? Who gets the most reps with the first team? We'll see shortly enough once the preseason kicks off in a couple of days. But that is an interesting position battle to keep an eye on, as is CB2. Cordell Flott got burned once or twice today, and, he's had his fair share of struggles throughout camp. We've given him his praise when he's done well. We've given him his criticism when he hasn't done well. But ultimately, I think that Nick McLeod is playing better. And I think that in the preseason, if that trend continues, we will see Nick McLeod take over the CB2 job and really steal it from Cordell Flott, who was the projected starter at the start of the summer. So McLeod continuing to play well. Very excited about that. Like you mentioned, Andrew Phillips, our nickel cornerback, rookie out of Kentucky, He's scrappy. He's physical. He was involved with one of those fights today, started one of them, was going toe-to-toe with Amon-Ra St. Brown, arguably the best slot wide receiver in the NFL, and that was fun to watch because he was getting scrappy with Amon-Ra. You love to see a rookie not afraid, not backing down against one of the best players in the NFL at the position that they defend.
The quote that he just had.
Quote, but I'd love to hear it.
Oh my goodness, I love this guy already. He says, I mean, this is what Drew Phillips says about his rep against Amon-Ra St. Brown, and then of course the fight ensuing. He said, I mean, it was a really good rep by me, so I kind of expect him to get mad. I mean, I'm a rookie, so I think I just did my job well, and maybe he didn't like it, but at the end of the day, we're just out there competing, so I expect it. Bro just said, I gotta give that man. That's a hell of a confidence right there. That's what you want to see from the Giants freaking rookie cornerback saying, I'm a rookie, but I kicked his ass, basically. And that's why he got mad about it. Like, that's awesome. Love that.
Yeah, talk your talk. That's what you love to see. Drew Phillips, man. He's really been standing out all summer, and I'm excited on Thursday once he gets that first live action in the preseason game, man. He's one of those players I'm definitely keeping a close eye on and eager to watch, really. And I think he could be a really big part of this defense. Another note, Alex, you mentioned kind of the defensive line. Kayvon Thibodeau had a couple of plays, and what I've heard for the last, I want to say, 4 practices straight, there's this term, this label going around for a newly acquired Giants player. The term is unblockable. Brian Burns has apparently been dominating Andrew Thomas. He's been dominating Penei Sewell, Taylor Decker. Everybody that he's gone up against the past few days has just been unable to block Brian Burns. And I just want to express excitement about that, Alex. I mean, the Giants have Brian freaking Burns, Spider-Man. They traded the second-round pick. They paid him almost $150 million. But hey, they're getting one of the best sack artists in the NFL. Can't be more excited about it. He dominated once again today. How are you feeling, Alex, just about the pass rush in general, but namely Brian Burns continuing to be quote-unquote unblockable throughout training camp?
I mean, he destroyed Andrew Thomas over the weekend. So, I mean, if this is what we ended up with because we traded that second-round pick away, I'm all for it. A 26-year-old dominant pass rusher, guys. The Giants won Super Bowls because of their pass rushing and a couple Eli Manning miracles, right? Like, if they didn't get to Tom Brady, there was no way we're winning those championships. You know what I mean? Like, the pass rush and a couple of miracles sometimes is what it takes. Pass rush can change the course of a game. Brian Burns is a game changer. He is a game breaker. This is the type of player you need to win football games. It's not a wish. It's a necessity. You have to have players like this. The Giants got one for a second round pick. They traded a second round pick that would have turned into a Latimer, or rather a Lassiter or a Kool-Aid McKinstry. It maybe would have been one of those guys. They ended up with Tyler Nubin instead. But they turned that into a superstar pass rusher. Of course, they had to pay him, but you got to pay somebody. Someone's got to earn a big payday. The Giants didn't have anyone on this roster that was worthy of a contract like that. So, I'm happy they got him and they paid him because, again, somebody's got to earn the money. They got to spend the money somewhere. They might as well go out and get somebody that's 26 years old, not even really entering their prime, maybe just sniffing their prime, and obviously even more upside to have. So I love the move. Love that he's dominating. As long as he can stay healthy, this Giants defense, this pass rush is going to be very formidable.
Yeah, I'm feeling that way too. I think the Giants really have something forming here. And actually, on top of that, I kind of want to expand. Brian Burns recently, obviously, like I said, he's been unblockable the last few days, but he's also been praising Azeez Ojulari quite a bit and saying that Ojulari has looked really good and that him as your number 3 pass rusher could be pretty lethal for this Giants defense. I don't know if you saw it, Alex, but Azeez Ojulari recently vowed to stay healthy this season. He said, I'm going to stay healthy, I'm going to be available, and I want to play a lot, and I want to play well.
Sure. Yeah.
Come on now.
I vow not to eat French fries every now and then.
Don't overblow the injuries that Azeez Ojulari has had.
No, it's not that. You can't vow you're going to stay healthy. It's like
the
you can't
point that I was
guarantee
getting to. He's going to play a lot less this year. He's going to have a lot less opportunities to get hurt. In those small opportunities where he is playing, though, in terms of number 3 pass rushers, you have to be pretty excited about the potential that Azeez Ojulari brings as a rotational guy to this defense. Brian Burns sees the potential and has been getting excited about it. And I'm excited about it too, because I've always been an Ojulari fan. He's the last man standing from that god-awful 2021 draft class that Dave Gettleman blessed us with. But when you're looking at Azeez Ojulari, Alex, what are your expectations now? Because you kind of just joked about that a little bit, and somewhat valid. You can't really vow to stay healthy, but I do think there's an argument to be made that with Azeez Ojulari stepping into this third pass rushing role, he should be able to stay healthier because of that and maybe become a much better player.
Yeah, I mean, look, at the end of the day, the Giants need depth. Like, that's been one of our biggest weaknesses is our depth. Now you look at Azeez Ojulari playing this rotational role. This is where he should be. Starting has not worked for him. So I do think that him coming off the bench, mitigating fatigue, can step in and start if need be. That's fine. This is where he can really make the most of his reps. Like, look at Bryce Huff. Bryce Huff didn't play that many reps last year, but he was elite when he was on the football field. And that's kind of what Azeez Ojulari could do. When he's on the football field, if he's elite, he's going to get paid next year, a pretty penny, but he's got to stay healthy, has to make the most of his opportunities. He's a pure pass rusher. That's what he's always been. Struggled in run defense, but he can rush the passer. He's always had that ability. So just Giants need him to stay healthy and when his number's called, make an impact, and I think he can do that.
I'm with you, man. I still think he's really good. I think when you harken back to that 2022 season, I believe it was, year 2 for him, I think he played in, 7 games, but had 5.5 sacks. He was nearly a sack per game. He had 3 forced fumbles as well. And that's kind of the role that I want him to play this year. You're going to play less. You're not going to be a 3-down defensive lineman. But if you can be a 1 to 2 down player, rotate in there, and be productive when you're out there, you could be a very valuable player in this Giants defense. So really like what Azeez Ojulari's bringing in terms of his potential. But last note that I want to dive into before we wrap this thing up, Alex, pretty lengthy recap on just one day of joint practices. But I texted this to you early this morning. Dan Duggan of The Athletic released what he feels like through his observations at practice to be the kind of soft depth chart right now, unofficial depth chart for the New York Giants. And at wide receiver number 3, well, number 1, he had, of course, Malik Nabers. Number 2, he had Wan'Dale Robinson. Number 3, he had Jalen Hyatt. Number 4, he had Darius Slayton. What are your thoughts on that? Because when you're looking at Slayton entering his 6th season in the NFL, he's led the Giants in receiving yards in 4 of the last 5 years. He's coming off of a career season with 50 catches, 770 yards, and 5 touchdowns. Darius Slayton, in terms of experience and production, is the best wide receiver that the Giants have, not named Malik Nabers. But when you look at youth and potential and developmental process, Jalen Hyatt, other than Malik Nabers, probably has the most potential out of these receivers. So it's interesting to see the Giants kind of balance that so far through training camp, but it did catch my eye. I thought it was worth noting. Slayton, so far, according to Duggan, looks like WR4, not WR3 when compared to Jalen Hyatt.
I mean, listen, I think we all know the writing's on the wall kind of with Darius Slayton. Great, solid player, decent WR2, but his time is coming to an end here. The Giants sort of extended him. Otherwise, he wanted an extension. The Giants said, no, thank you. We're going to give you pennies and incentives instead. Really, it comes down to this. Either the Giants are good enough, they need him, or they're bad enough to sell him. And one way or another, Darius Slayton's walking. Whether it's in free agency or whether he's traded. So they literally drafted a replica of Darius Slayton and Jalen Hyatt to take over his role. There's no need for Slayton long term. Some people may disagree with that. I just think that's reality. Hyatt, speedster, go route, crossing concept guy, developing his route tree. He's in a 2nd year, 3rd round pick. This is Darius Slayton's replacement, guys. I think the Giants like what Slayton brings to the table, went out and got his replica and a guy that can develop over the course of time, and Slayton can kind of mitigate those growing pains and be there to kind of ease things along. We're reaching that point where Hyatt is looking good, making the catches. He's downfield and he's open. He's kind of becoming a nice target. By the way, Nabers, 8 targets today, 8 completions. Absolute freaking monster. I just think that Hyatt, it's the natural progression here of where this offense is going at WR2. Hyatt will end up becoming that guy. The Giants will have 3 receivers on rookie contracts at one of the most expensive positions in football. That's where you want to be, man. That's exactly where you want to be if you're the Giants. So now next up is figuring out how to put together this complete team and it not be just a couple great players scattered across the board. They need to play cohesive football.
I'm right there with you. 8 for 8 from Malik Nabers. Dominant rep after dominant rep. Jalen Hyatt with a couple deep receptions today. Darius Slayton with a couple as well. Isaiah Hodgins got involved today. I don't know. Overall, it was a good practice for the Giants. And again, when you compare and contrast this first joint practice with the Lions compared to last year's first joint practice with the Lions, you got to feel encouraged. Again, not trying to be a homer, not trying to be overly optimistic here. All I'm saying is there is reason for encouragement. I'm not saying this is a 12-win team or a Super Bowl contender. I'm just saying I'm encouraged by the progress that they're making. So very happy to react to today's joint practice. And of course, they will be back on the field tomorrow for a second joint practice as they ramp up for Thursday versus the Detroit Lions at 7 p.m. preseason game. And of course, on Wednesday night, I'll be previewing that Thursday preseason game right here on the channel with a live stream. Make sure to tune into that and stay tuned to Fireside Giants for all of your New York Giants content, coverage, rumors, info, training camp reactions, all right here, Fireside Giants. So make sure to leave a like if you enjoyed this episode. Subscribe to the channel if you're new. Ring the bell so you don't miss an episode and comment your thoughts down below in the comment section. If you're listening on Apple or Spotify, please make sure to leave us a 5-star review. Go ahead and follow us on all of our social media channels at Fireside Giants. Without further ado, catch you on the next one. Have a good one, and let's go Giants.
Perfect.